Okay.
Hello and welcome back to the FPL Tom YouTube channel and our final stream before the start of the season. Of course, I'm joined by my good friend, Mr. Jake. Jake, how are you?
I'm doing all right, thank you. Bracing myself for the inevitable backlash my team's probably going to get, but I'm good. How about you?
Oh, you know what, mate? I'm good. I'm just ready. I'm ready for a bit of football, to be honest. Last weekend kind of got me, hyped with all the EFL starting back up. Saturday 3 o'clock, soccer Saturday as well. It's just good quality entertainment, and I'm ready for FPL to be back.
Yeah, I'd feel that, mate.
Yeah, it's been a long time, but we're back. We're back, ladies and gentlemen. All for it to absolutely capitulate in game week 1, and never want to touch this game again and just cry.
To be fair, if you're doing that, then I'm probably laughing.
In today's stream, we are going to go through our Game Week 1 teams, both mine and Jake. We're also going to have a discussion around Haaland, Kane, Salah. We're also going to look at predicted points and the best fixtures to be targeting over the first 5 game weeks. And we are going to be answering all of your guys' questions, or pretty much as many as possible. If we don't get around to your question, apologies, but, don't have a strop in the chat like someone did last week. Come on, we're trying our best out here. We'll try to get through as many as we can. We have a few people in the chat already. Hello, AI Man, Sportcat 101, 101, 01, sorry, mate. We will get round to your questions in due course. But I think the best place to start is with my team. Unfortunately, Jake, we're gonna start with my team. We'll go on to yours second. Right, here is my game week 1 team selection. If you haven't seen the video which came out at 4, this is pretty much the team I had in that video. It's actually the exact same team. So if you haven't seen that video, go and check that out after the stream, as I'm going to go through more in-depth stuff in that video than I am in this stream. Starting off in goal, I've gone with Johnson. I think he's the best 4.5 million goalkeeper, especially after the news about Gaeta never ever playing for Palace again's pretty much come out. They've been linked to Alex McCarthy as a kind of backup to Johnson as well. So I definitely think he is the best 4.5 alternative. Palace as well have arguably, they did actually have the best XG conceded since Roy Hodgson's appointment in game week 29 onwards. So that's a really good defensive stat and defensive data kind of point to have for them. So very happy to have him. I think he's the best 4.5. If Turner as well is the only goalkeeper that Nottingham Forest do have, I think that's a great little switch. Me and you were talking about that before we came on, Jake, as well, weren't we, about Turner? And the fixtures correlate so nicely if you go Johnson and Turner, just rotating in and out when each other have difficult games, etc. The back line is very much template, to be honest. Estupinian, Gabriel, Chilwell, in a lot of people's teams, and, for very good reasons. Brighton obviously have really good fixtures. Same with Arsenal. Chelsea's fixtures are good after game week 2. Obviously, Liverpool at home, it's just one of them. I think that game could go either way. Could be 0-0, could be full of goals. You never know with that one. And, Ben Chilwell's been quite impressive in pre-season, making lots of kind of attacking runs, getting into good positions, which is what you want to see from these defenders, because they are going to pick up the attacking returns and hopefully get clean sheets. But I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. But yeah, Ben Chilwell, he's in there. We've gone for a 4-man midfield. We've gone Eze, we've gone Bruno, we've gone Saka, and we've gone Mbuemo. I think all of them are pretty much going to be you'd imagine 90-minute men who are going to play a lot of kind of the Premier League games this season, especially towards the start of the season. Maybe later on when European football kicks in and other cup competitions, we will see a little bit more rotation. But as well, all 3 are penalty takers as well. All 4, are penalty takers as well, which is something that I always like to kind of target, especially with VAR, just giving out penalties willy-nilly. And then the front 3, I've gone Haaland, Kane, and João Pedro. Kane is the big one, the kind of big anomaly, the differential that, a lot of people don't own. I've gone for him because he outscored Haaland from game week 2 to game week 38. He also ended up finishing the season only 9 points behind him, and he was the highest scoring player post-World Cup as well. We will talk a little bit more about that, kind of looking deeper into the data a little bit later on in the stream. But I just think if he stays, if Postecoglou gets this side and this system working as well as it did at Celtic, they are going to be a very attacking team and a very enjoyable team to watch as well. And if you have arguably one of the best strikers in the world in that system, and if he can perform as well as he did last year, he is going to be an absolute bagsman. Quickly running through the bench, Bentley's a little bit of a placeholder until the Turner card does become available on FPL. And then we've gone for Henry, a nice 4.5 million defender. I'll have to wait till the press conferences come out to see about whether or not he's injured or not. And then Anderson's been doing really well in pre-season for Newcastle. He's 4.5 million. So I don't think he's going to see my team too much, but he is there if needed. And then Baldock, 4 million defender, played a lot of pre-season minutes and a lot of games in the Championship last year for Sheffield United. Jake, what do you make of my team, mate? What do you make?
The starting 11 is up there with as strong as it can be, I think, for consistency of players playing the full 90 minutes and being, as we said last week, the talismanic? I don't know if that's a word. But the leaders of each team.
Yeah.
So I do like that. I think the bench is considerably weak. But that is the way that you've got to play it sometimes if you want the best starting 11. Depends what happens with Henry, like you said. I think Anderson is unlikely to. I think the one with Anderson is, as much as you might say he's been bright in pre-season, I think it's hard when you are a youngster playing for a club that can just buy someone worth 40-50 million like that. And there's a lot of competition in the attacking areas for Newcastle, which means that he's unlikely to actually get those Premier League minutes, or at least get a full 90 minutes. So even if someone were to drop out of your first team, it's unlikely Anderson's going to get you is ever going to get you more than 2 points, unless you just so happen to have that rogue week where he does score and you happen to miss out on a player in your 11, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then Baldock, I get it, because at least like with that one, you've kind of admitted he's cheap, he allows you more funds, but at least he will, more often than not, if he were to come in, get you 2 points because he plays. And that's hard. You'd like to think that you won't ever have to rely on him, but if you do, at least you're not getting a 0-pointer. And then the goalkeeper. Well, I think someone said in the chat not so long ago that you've got a Wolves guy in there. But
he's not going to last. He's not going to last. He's
not going to play anyway, is he?
No.
But yeah, I think it's one of those really. You're looking for someone that's cheap, and I don't think the goalkeeper area. I think that's probably the place where you want to be saving as much money as possible, rather than splashing the cash on those that are 5.5 million. I think even 5 million is pushing it. That being said, I have gone for one myself, but I would say I think if you can get yourself a 4.5 million guy that you're pretty reliant on and you feel like you can trust him week in, week out, like you have with Johnson, I don't think you can really complain about who's your substitute keeper, because if you have to miss out because Johnson's injured or whatever for 1 week, 2 weeks, you'd like to think you'd be able to deal with the consequences, maybe make a transfer, but if not, at least it's just the goalkeeper position, and more often than not they do stay fit, they do stay in goal, and they do tend to rack up the points. Like you said, with Crystal Palace's start and their form last season, it seems like a bit of a no-brainer to have him as your main keeper. So why pay more money for someone that's just going to sit on the bench?
Yeah, definitely. With this team as well, I do have £1 million in the bank, so that is something that maybe, like you said, improve that on the bench a little bit maybe. But for me, I think Anderson's probably going to just be sat third sub most weeks. It's going to be a pretty dire week if I need him. There's Marvellous Nakamba as well, who's probably going to be playing first team football every single week. So if I wanted to go for someone who's going to just play 90 minutes and just pick up 2-3 points a week, I could just go for him, to be honest. They're going to just be sat third sub, whoever is that 4.5 million player. We have got a few more people entering the chat. Luke says he's back. Hello, Luke. Thank you for carrying last week's stream. Dan as well has also said Jake looks more like a baseball guy. Is that true, Jake? Are you into your baseball?
No, but you'd maybe question my footballing knowledge in about 5 minutes' time. So maybe that's the case.
Oh dear. Yeah, I've accidentally just minimized the chat as well on my stream
Oh, I
screen.
was excited to know how you were going to pronounce the next dude's name.
Mans Anke Anderson. If I've said that wrong, I do apologise, mate. He has asked, good evening, you pros. Is it difficult to transfer between, let's say, two 6.5 million players for Game Week 2? May the price change stand in the way? I think if you're ahead of the price changes, obviously they do come in quite quickly, especially at the start of the game because so many people are on it. So prices are going to fluctuate. And if you do feel like you want to go for one or the other, it might be worth just taking advantage of that rather than waiting for injury news. Personally, my preference is to kind of wait and see, but I don't understand why you would be switching maybe in game week 2 from one to the other unless someone gets sent off or potentially, gets injured or something. Someone else has asked, is it a risk to go with Mbuemo? No, he was back in training the other day. And as soon as the press has come out as well, if it's kind of commented that he is injured, then just get him out of your team. They'll probably come out tomorrow or Friday for Brentford as well. So just keep your eyes peeled on Twitter. Make sure Mbuemo's fit. If he's not, then, replace him with one of the other good 6.5 midfielders. You've got Matoma, you've got Diaby as well. Is Kovacic a hidden gem is another question. Jake, Kovacic, would you be putting him in your team? Personally, for me, I'd say no.
Well, he's a swap for Gundogan, isn't he? So, I
Yeah.
mean, if he can perform up to Gundogan's level, then yes, but I would say not yet,
Yeah.
because he's a slightly different player. He's more of a transitional player. He doesn't tend to actually end up with the goals like Gundogan did, but maybe that was because of the system he was playing in. So I think that's something where you just need to wait and see, and also wait and see as to how much he will actually play in the Premier League.
Yeah, definitely. I think as well if they sign Lucas Paqueta as well, that does add like extra competition in terms of that kind of like centrally kind of attacking midfield role. So maybe that's going to limit his minutes. You've also got Bernardo Silva who can play a little bit centrally as well. Personally, for me, I just don't think it's worth going for these City midfielders. There's just so much quality and depth that you're just going to get burnt, to be honest.
Agreed.
Right, that was my team selection ahead of Game Week 1. If you did watch my video that came out earlier, you also saw that I do have a Salah draft in the backup as well, in case Kane does leave to Bayern Munich by the time the deadline happens. If you want to go and see that, go check out the video after this stream. But Jake, let's move on to your team, mate.
Here's my Salah draft.
Right, mate. If you want to talk us through your team, we're all ears.
Yeah, so from game week 1, as you can tell, from our first stream that we did, as you can tell, I have made a few changes, a few wobbles and injury shouts and maybe doubts have cast out in my mind as to having those players stay in. I think, namely, Brian Mbuemo's dead leg, it seems to be, was one of those where I took him out immediately as soon as I heard that, before I even found out that it was only a dead leg. So I know Tom's taken the risk of playing him. And you'd like to think, well, you would expect him to play if he is fit enough to. Oh, God, Dan, come on, let me at least explain myself. Um, um, so the reason I've gone for Onana and Shaw. I feel like that's a pretty sensible thing to do. I don't think you can really argue against that. Maybe you could argue that I've gone for two defensive United players, which does put all of my eggs in one basket kind of thing. But I do feel like starting against Wolves, I do back them to keep a clean sheet against Wolves. I know they've got that new manager bounce, as Matthew Paul has suggested. Sorry if you are a Wolves fan, as it looks like from your logo in your profile pic, but I just don't. I just do see that being a comfortable United win, and I don't really see Wolves getting a goal out of that. But I'm probably going to be eating my words after saying all that. I've stuck with Trent. That is a biased one because I went to go and see Liverpool play in Preston a couple of days ago and saw just how open we are at the back as soon as a team just counters us. We look great attacking wise. I do think we'll score quite a lot this season. So it does beg the question as to maybe having a Liverpool attacker in there, but it's one of those you've got to wait and see as to who plays. but defensively we look a bit of a shambles. I'm not going to lie. Um, but it's one of those. Trent did end the season quite well, and I like the thought process that I've got in my head, and maybe I'm going to sound deluded to people, but I think the best thing about Trent is that he is so much more money than any other defender. It means that if things do go horribly wrong for me, I've got a bit of an advantage over the others that have maybe invested all of their money a bit more evenly across their team, because I can then reinvest in a player that's cheaper at the back, who started the season strongly or who has a favourable run of fixtures, to then be able to use my money wisely. The same goes for Salah. I'll do exactly the same there. Once again, you could argue it's a biased decision. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I think with Salah, there's more of a thought process behind it, because I do think Salah will start the season off quite strongly. Maybe Chelsea's a bit of a difficult game to start it off, but he does have that favourable run of scoring in the first game of the season. He does enjoy scoring against Chelsea. But then, of course, they've got the Bournemouth game week 2. So I'd actually be more inclined to captain him there. Haaland, don't need to talk about him really, do I? Joel Pedro, I've gone for. I think there are a number of people that have gone for Ferguson, but I think Pedro. I think someone actually mentioned it. Was that Matthew as well? It was
Yeah.
questioned whether Pedro's a certainty. I really do feel like he should be,
Hmm.
uh, but then it just depends on how loyal De Zerbi is to the likes of the great Danny Welbeck. But
Pele.
yeah, exactly. So we'll just have to wait and see. But I do feel like if there is that anomaly where he doesn't start as much as there may be a few tiers across the fantasy leagues, I do think it's someone to bank on to be starting afterwards. And to be honest, I'm saying that just to have my own back. But once again, I do feel like he'll start. I do think he'll be quite crucial to Brighton as well. And you mentioned, Tom, didn't you, that he's supposed to be on penalties as well?
Yeah, he's
So
took 2 in pre-season with
yes, there
Pascal
you go.
Gross on the pitch as well. So bodes quite well
It
for him.
just depends on what happens when Milner's playing, I guess. Um, but yeah, and then I've gone for Morris. Just before we went live on this stream, I was doing an R and over what to do about Morris, because I do like having him in, because I actually do fancy Luton to stay up this season. And if they're going to stay up, they're going to need to score goals, and I do feel like that's where Morris will be really important. I think the only issue is I'm cancelling myself out by having a bit of a goal fest in my head with Brighton and Luton. I don't know whether I'm going to regret that. And then, of course, Morris doesn't play the second game week because of the postponement. So I am looking around at options. I would like to bring Ollie Watkins in, because he's got a nice run after, especially after the Newcastle opener. Um, but the only issue with that is, of course, I have put a bit of money, maybe too much. I don't know what you'd think, on having Jared Bowen in my team. I remember last season I had Philip Billing in for quite a bit. He was quite consistent, I must say. Got me quite a few good points. But I remember having him in for the West Ham game, and West Ham turned them over 4-0. Jared Bowen was quite influential in that. So that's my thought process there. But it seems like West Ham are in a bit of a transitional period, especially in the window. They're finally seeming to get some transfer deals done in their favour. But having lost Rice, and who knows what's going to happen with Paqueta, I think it's a hit and miss, that one, and maybe I'm risking it a bit too much there. But if I'm to go by my logic of what I like to look at, and that is the head-to-heads and how they played last time, and I do think the mentality of the players will have a part to play in it. Bowen had a great game at the Vitality, so I feel like it's one of those to bear in mind. And then, yeah, my bench, I think my bench is a little bit stronger than Tom's, purely for the fact that I've got my bench in a way so that it can rotate a little bit more, rather than just relying on the first 11. Gibbs White, I don't think he's going to make my first 11 away to Arsenal, but he's Forest host Sheffield United game week 2, so that's what he's going to be ready for. Matty Cash also, they've got a nice run of games, but they do start the game at St James's Park. Not sure I fancy them to keep a clean sheet there. And then with Collins, once again, another one. I feel like they could well beat Spurs. Who knows what Spurs turn up, but I just don't see them keeping a clean sheet. I feel like Kane will probably get a goal. But after that, they have a nice run. And I've gone with Turner because he's 4 million and he's just signed for Forest. Tom's trying to put a few doubts in my head, saying that Dean Henderson's on his way there as well. But for the time being, you'd expect him to be number one, and so it just seems like a sensible option because right this second he will start for Forest, whereas the likes of Areola, who knows if Fabianski still starts ahead of him.
I think he does. I think Fabianski's still first choice, to be honest. One player I had a question about, Jeffrey Schlupp, mate. You wanna...
Uh, I was just trying to avoid that one, to be honest. I don't know if you noticed, but I just didn't mention him. Um, yeah, so the reason behind this one, I don't know if Tom wants to take the blame for this one. But no, this is the substitution I made for Brian and Buemo when I was in a bit of a oh no, he's not going to play. We were talking, me and Tom, about how Palace have been playing, how nice their fixtures are. He was talking about how he had Johnson and he had Eze. I was then inspired, shall I say,
Inspired.
to bring in Gahey because I think I do like the start of the season. I do like the defensive strength. I think Lewis Hall will be an interesting one to see how he gets on.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we both agree on that. But I've gone for Gahey because he will play.
Mm-hmm.
I do think they should keep a clean sheet at home to Sheffield, especially with all of their players. I don't even know if they're going to have a team come that game. But yeah, with Jeffrey Schlupp, I think didn't you say he was playing out and out number 9 target man?
No, I did not say out and out number 9. I'm just going to put that one out there. Dan said as well, watch him captain Schlupp in game week 2. And you know what? I think you easily could. I guarantee we'll rock up next week.
Why we waited a week?
Sheffield United, it's a great fixture. No, but in all seriousness, he has been playing as part of like a front three with Ayew and Edouard. So, he is attacking, and he's not a bad player, but I just think personally I'd go for Eze if I had to go for a Palace player. But, you like to play this game a little bit differently. You like your anomalies.
I have got a brain. I'm here to give.
I have got a brain.
I'm here to give. I am here to give advice, and if anyone has a question and stuff, I will give a logical advice and then what my head's thinking and try and rationalize it. I do think Eze is the better option. There's no doubt about that. Eze will perform across the season better than Schlupp, but the reason I've gone for Schlupp is because he's cheaper. Because I do think he'll start the season, and who knows? And I do. We've already had this conversation plenty of times. Tom is going for the win. Tom is going for the jugular. I'm going for that. I don't want to be that person that's just gone for what everyone else has gone for. And I like going for the players that I feel like they could start the season off. They could be a difference. Maybe I'll be regretting it come the end of this weekend. But I'd like to think that these players can make a difference and can maybe sneak me a few points that no one would have expected.
Yeah, definitely. You're getting called a FPL terrorist in the chat as well.
Oh. Why has that guy made his name in all caps? Anyway.
Oh dear. To be fair, I could see there is a comparison between, Jeffrey Schlupp and Osama bin Laden, to be honest. They're both very similar kind of vibes to me.
Oosh. I don't know how Jeffrey will feel about that, but you know what? No, actually, it must be just the fact that he is going to start this game week on fire.
Yeah.
He's going to explode into life in game week 1.
Oh dear. I think we probably should skirt past this point. Matthew Paul's asked, what's more important, gut feeling or stats? I can guess your answer.
No, speaking logically, as I promised. I do think statistics have a part to play in it massively. Like, they're there for a reason, but things do change. And I do feel like I'm not just using gut feeling. I'm not just like, oh, this youth guy's been playing quite well for the under 13s. He's going to play on Saturday. Jeffrey Schlupp is going to play. People like that will play. My team should fully all feature and play over the 60 minutes. It would be what I expect. So I'm not looking to take the complete piss. I am looking for players that I do think will be that anomaly. Just so happens that my whole 11 are a bit of an anomaly. But I do think sometimes it is worth going for your gut feeling, because otherwise how are you going to have that differential that's going to nick you that few points? If you're going for the top, maybe don't completely change your team up like I have, but it's definitely worth being maybe like 10% gut feeling, 90% statistics, because otherwise someone else who has gone for their gut feeling will have that player that will do something crazy.
It's interesting you say that because I watched a video with the winner from last year, and he said he used to pick players by just flipping coins, but he said like he'd always have a gut feeling on which way it was always going to land. So the big week for him was going between Wilson and Isak versus the double game week they had where they beat Leeds. Was it like 3-1, 4-1? And
Right.
Wilson obviously got was it a hat trick of penalties?
He scored. He did score a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and he said like he went with his gut feeling on that week and it just paid off. So I definitely think it is one of those games where data helps to a certain point, and I definitely think we've seen this in our head-to-head league. Data helps to a certain point and can take you so far, but sometimes it's just those weird random calls that you have that you just like, I'm going to captain this player this week, or I'm going to bring in this player. For me, my gut feeling player is Eze this season. I just think he's going to be absolutely amazing. I know he's quite like popular within like certain spaces on Twitter, but he's still only at like 12% owned. That's a lot less than like Matoma and other players around, and Brian Mbuemo as well. But yeah, he's for me the player that I think is going to have an amazing year this year. We've had a few other questions as well. Is Nico Jackson a good Haaland partner? I think, yeah. With that Nkunku news, doesn't look like they really have another forward kicking about. I think he's going to play a lot of games as the number 9 as well. So fixtures aren't bad after game week 2 as well.
Agreed. I agree with that.
Yeah, I definitely think Jackson is one to be considering. Right, let's move on. We're going to talk now about Haaland, Kane and Salah. Obviously, me and Jake are different in our game week 1 team selections. He's gone Salah, I've gone Kane, but we both have Haaland, which is the main thing. On screen right now, we do have a kind of selection of data with all the good stuff you need. Cost, minutes, games, goals, total shots, on target, FPL assists, attempted assists, XG, XA, and expected FPL points. And as well, points. This is all data post World Cup as well. So from game week 17 or 18, these are kind of all the key data points in that. There's some very interesting ones. Obviously, the key one that I highlighted earlier, Kane and Haaland both with the most goals. Salah with the most assists. Kane with the most points, absolutely storming it over Erling Haaland. But then if you look in terms of minutes, Haaland has played around 300 minutes less. Jake, I think it's pretty clear which way you're going as kind of a partner with Haaland, and it is Mohamed Salah. Why kind of have you gone for that over, say, like a Kane?
I think it's. I don't actually have an outside answer bar the fact that there have been a lot of rumours about Kane, and I feel like it's still not written off that he's going to stay. I
True.
think I think it's getting to the stage where I feel like he won't want to leave if it's going to jeopardise himself.
Yeah.
And it is getting quite close to game week 1, and I think I'd be surprised if he played in the Premier League and then left. I think if he plays this weekend, I do believe he will stay for the remainder of the season, but who knows? But I think I saw a rumour that there was another bid being made by Bayern Munich, so who knows how that will go. Salah, of course, there have been rumours from Saudi clubs bidding on him, but once again, I feel like that's kind of just been blown away because it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Could be wrong, but right at this moment in time, I'm fully sure Salah starts the season. With Kane, we don't know, but it's one of those. I think, Tom, at the end of the day, I think this is where the bias comes in, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that when you support a club that you go for the player that you want to support, and because I think they're both well entitled to absolutely smash it points wise. I think there's nothing stopping Kane challenging Haaland for the Golden Boot. Like you say, Salah seems to be someone that may be more involved in the assists than the scoring this season, but he'll still score a hatful of goals. So it's one of those where it could work either way. I guess the best thing about Salah is he's a little bit more money, which means that if I do want to reinvest, I've got that little bit more money to reinvest with. Yeah. But quite frankly, if you have Kane in as well and things don't go to plan, you've got money to reinvest in with that as well. So it works both ways. But yeah, as this Lewis Saxton has said. It is because I'm a Liverpool fan. I think that is the crux of it, and I don't think I'm ashamed in saying that. I think that is why I've gone for that over Kane, because of course you would, and I feel like if you're a Spurs fan and you've gone for Kane over Salah, I don't think you can really argue that because it is a bit of a toss up between the two.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely think that does play into people's kind of minds when they are a fan of a team, especially a good team. Like, if you're a Wolves fan, then, like Matthew, he's
Mm.
probably not picking any Wolves players, is he? He's probably, looking down, the barrel of a gun this season with the way, it's probably going to end up being Championship football. Friday nights on Sky Sports in the old Championship at like Plymouth away. That's how his season's looking. So you can imagine he's not having any players. But for you, Salah does make sense. You obviously support Liverpool as well, so it's a double win as well, isn't it? I get that. But for me, I've gone for Kane as I just think, like, last year he scored 30 plus goals in a team, let's be honest, that were dreadful. Like, they didn't create chances. It was very, like, just sluggish football. He was fully carrying them to victories, to wins, picking up goals absolutely everywhere. And I think if you put him into a team that's had, in 2 games, 32 plus shots in 2 pre-season games, if you put him in there, you've got Maddison behind him as well now, whipping in balls, playing beautiful passes. For me, that's only going to go up in terms of his goal involvement as well.
Yeah, I see that. I think the start of the season can suit both of them if you look at it in different ways. I think I've
Mm.
explained why I would fancy Salah for the first few weeks. Um, I think the one thing I would say over Salah is the fact that if things go poorly for Tottenham, because I don't think they're going to go poorly for Kane, I feel like he's just an ever present on the score sheet, regardless of how Spurs are doing.
Yeah.
But if Spurs are struggling completely and it's not really going to plan, you have got that money to reinvest, etc. And that's that. Well, that's great. But for Salah, all I would say is you've got that extra money to reinvest. Plus, there's a midfield position that you can reinvest in. And as we've spoken about countless times, the midfield is vast. The opportunity, the players that you can get are incredible. The other thing I was going to mention is that Salah, because he's more money, means that if things aren't going well for Salah and Kane's absolutely flying, I can just swap the two of them around because I could get myself someone that's not too bad in that midfield slot who is performing all right. And like we've said, there are plenty of options in midfield, and I'd have the funds then to buy Kane. So it may not be quite as straightforward to do the other way around, but like I said, I'm happy to take that risk at the start of the season just so that I can then see what my options are like as the season starts.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a fair point because if I wanted to downgrade Kane and upgrade Anderson with that money, it's going to take me 2 transfers to do that. Whereas if you want to switch to another midfielder, it is only going to be 1 transfer for you. And obviously at the start of the season, 3 transfers are very valuable kind of commodities that you're going to need to improve your team, get advantage of the certain players, move certain injuries out. So I think that is a very valid and fair point, to be honest, to kind of go with Salah. The midfield options are so much better than the forward options this year, especially with the injuries to Jesus and in Nkunku as well. Just kind of meaning that there's just less quality in terms of those attacking positions. So I think that's a very fair point to raise. In terms of Haaland, obviously now it's 6 games without a goal. That was the statistic read out as he came off in the Community Shield. Didn't have an amazing performance either. Some people as well calling him a fraud in certain group chats that we're in. What do you think? Can you go without Haaland, or has he just got to be a player that you have to have 100% essential for your game week 1 team?
I feel like you've stopped speaking, but I can't actually hear anything all of a sudden.
Uh-oh.
What did you say to me then?
I just said, well, I basically said is Haaland essential, but I put more, I jazzed it up a little bit. I gave like, some nice pretense. I glossed it all up, and then you just looked at me blankly.
All of a sudden, you were speaking, and then I felt like you must have asked me a question because you stopped. I was waiting for the final part of that, and nothing happened. Yeah, Haaland is essential. That is the easy answer to give you. I'm
Fair.
sorry that I can't give you any feedback on what you finished off that sentence with, but yeah, he is. He will score. Whether I remember you saying that there was a 6 game absence of goals from him,
Mm.
but as we've learned from last season, his let alone like his touch to goal ratio, let alone his game to goal ratio or minutes to goal ratio, should I say? Like the amount of goals he scores from such minimal touches per game is immaculate. So yeah, there's just no. It's a no-brainer, especially if you're going to go by stats rather than gut feeling.
Mm.
And to be fair, my gut feeling is there's just it's completely overpowered by the statistics that Haaland has. I did start the season last season without him, and I had to reluctantly take like 3 or 4 weeks to actually be able to afford him because I was like, I can't go out, like I can't go the remainder of the season without Haaland, and he dragged me right up the positions in the league eventually because the stubbornness left me, as we're probably going to watch on these next few streams over the next couple of months, as like my team just slowly becomes more like everyone else's.
Slowly but surely, you'll get to a team that looks very template, and all this stuff about Jeffrey Schlupp and all the differentials will slowly fade into the abyss.
Exactly.
Right, let's move on. We're going to talk about predicted points in our next slide that we do have available. These are the I think top 11 we've got here. Predicted points for the next 3 game weeks. Of course, Haaland and Salah absolutely leading the way. It is no surprise with that. Salah expected to score 7.9 points in game week 1, which is absolutely ridiculous, as I can see Jake switches his head over to go and have a look at the table. Oh, how nice. As you can see there's other players that we've talked about. Salah, Saka is in my draft, Kane, Martinelli and Odegaard and Grealish and Rashford, players that aren't in any of our drafts, so we will come on to talk a little bit about them. And then right at the bottom is a player who has caught my eye over the past few game weeks. It is Luis Diaz. So I think we'll start from the bottom. You obviously went and watched Liverpool versus, was it Darmstadt?
Darmstadt, yeah.
Darmstadt the other night. Luis Diaz obviously scored that wonderful goal from the corner as well. Is he an option in FPL?
100%. He was brilliant here. The best thing I saw about him was his link-up play with Jota,
Mm.
which would be interesting to see how the season starts off because of just how many attacking options we have. We of course have maybe a midfield option missing, especially with this Lavia, whatever you want to call it, going on.
Yeah.
Definitely won't be happening before the weekend. I'd be very surprised if we saw anything progress about that. So come Sunday, it's going to most likely be McAllister, Szoboszlai, and then there's just the question of do you play a Curtis Jones who probably deserves to start the season, or do you drop Gakpo back who deserves to start the season as well, considering how he ended his season, which would then allow Jota and Diaz to link up because I do think they played exceptionally well together. Both scored. Salah also got in the goals. So I feel like those three up top would be the best way to go about it. But then that begs the question of whether Gakpo plays. It's going to be one of the two. Whereas I feel like it's a pretty certain outcome that it's going to be Salah and Diaz starting the season.
Yeah, definitely. I think Diaz has been quite impressive. I own his so rare card as well, so I do hope that he has like a really good season and plays a lot of games. Obviously, the last kind of 2 seasons have been a little bit injury hampered as well. Didn't play too many minutes last year, so I definitely think he's a player that I'm going to keep my eye on over those first few game weeks and see if he definitely is an option, because for me that might be my cheaper way into that Liverpool attack. Obviously I'll have a mil in the bank. I could downgrade João Pedro after game week 3 and maybe move to Diaz as an option, or
Well, it
Jota.
allows me to do the same and just get rid of Salah.
Yeah, yeah. If he can cover off Salah, I think he's definitely worth a potential punt. Rashford, a player that neither of us have, at 46.1% owned as well, which is extremely high. Yeah. I just don't know. I don't fancy Rashford when he plays as the number 9, to be honest. But I don't know.
I think he's just been priced out a little bit.
Mm.
Um, is he 9 million? Am I right?
He is 9 million, yeah.
Just a little bit too much money, I think, for like you say, he's not that out and out goal scorer. He will score, he will be involved, and he will play. But 9 million is quite a lot.
Yeah.
Um, I feel like he needs to be a little bit more consistent in front of goal
I, d- I
than
don't.
he
I don't think
is.
that's necessarily the issue. I think he was very consistent last year. It's just the fact I don't like him when he plays up front, and that's like he just doesn't look as good compared to when he plays out wide.
Yeah, but if he's consistent, what's the issue?
He's not as consistent in that forward role as what I mean. You were saying like in terms of goal scoring, he's consistent in terms of that at times when he goes on these purple patches, which he does. But as a when he plays as a forward, he's just not as good. And I think Bruno's worth it for 0.5 mil cheaper.
Oh, 100%. Bruno is undervalued, if anything. I think less questions would have been asked had the prices been swapped for those two.
Mm.
Um, but it is what it is. I think Bruno at 8.5 million is a really good player to have in your team.
Yeah, definitely. Next player is Jack Grealish, kind of going under the radar. He was very popular at the back end of FPL last year. This year, not so much, only 6.7, but is predicted to get 15.6 points over the opening 3 game weeks. I've not gone for him, and I've not gone for any City midfielders as I don't fancy playing Pep Roulette. I imagine it's the exact same for you, to be honest, as well.
And I think it's the exact same for everyone else. I think people that would have gone for a City player other than Haaland, and I guess you can forgive De Bruyne, but even he's part of this roulette. But any other player in the City team, I feel like they've either gone with their gut, which I've been told off for, or they're a City fan. And if you're a City fan going for a Jack Grealish or someone else, like it's one of those again, they're a quality player. Why not? Because it's worth having a punt on players like that if you fancy it. But like you say, it's all down to Pep Roulette at the end of the day, and who knows how the season starts. I think with Grealish at the end of last season, it was quite clear that he was going to play week in, week out.
Mm.
So it made sense to have him in because he was performing really well. If Grealish starts the season strongly again, or another midfielder or attacker of some sort does come in to play consistently and perform well, then of course you'll see the rise in their players' ownership. But for the time being, you can really only rely on the fact that Haaland starts. You could rely on Gundogan starting last season and he's left. So that just
Mm.
goes to show that you really don't know what Pep is going to do this season. Um, so yeah, I feel like that's the reason why maybe his ownership's quite low.
Yeah, there's actual like rumours as well that apparently he's going to drop Edison for game week 1
Because
just because it's Pep. This is genuine rumours that he's going to play. Who's the other guy they've got?
Scott Carson,
Not Scott Carson. Now, it'd actually be memes if he played Scott Carson for a full season.
Ortega.
Yeah, apparently Ortega's going to play game week 1. That's like rumours going around on Twitter at the moment. And we will probably get early team news as well for that City team. And he's at 4 million. So I think, you know what?
What do you reckon the chemistry's like for Ortega and Schlupp?
You know what, mate? They're both they're just tasty. They're just
Yeah,
it's
I
great.
feel like they goes well together.
Yeah. Schlupp and Ortega. It's two players that I never ever thought I'd see in an FPL draft. But, here we are.
Well, we'll see.
Moving on to our next two players, we've got Martinelli and Odegaard. I did have Martinelli originally in one of my teams, but I have taken him out after the Community Shield performance. I just don't think he looked amazing, but I think when you're going up against Kyle Walker, it's always difficult to look kind of good, especially with his pace, his power, and just his overall defensive ability as well. So I do think that is a little bit maybe harsh on my part. But I think with Trossard scoring again, I know it did come off Akanji's leg, but with Trossard scoring yet again, is it worth going for Martinelli?
I think it is,
Mm.
and I don't have him in my team, but I don't think you can fault anyone that's got Martinelli, Saka, or Trossard. I mean, I know I'm including Trossard because I've got him, but
Yeah.
the reason I think he's likely to play is because, yeah, he does seem to be an ever presence in front of goal recently. He had a very good impact when he signed for Arsenal. He's been quite good in pre-season, quite prolific, and like you say, he came clutch in the final, regardless of how the ball ended up in the net. It was quite clever play from him to even open up a shooting opportunity. He's got the goal. Jesus will be missing, so who knows? But why would you even think that there is a chance that the three of them could not start together? I mean, who knows? Like maybe Nketiah will start the season. Maybe Havertz will start up front because he didn't look too bad as maybe more of a hold up player as the number nine at points in the City Arsenal game. But with the way Trossard's been performing and with the way that Saka and Martinelli have been performing and haven't been known to perform and have brought a lot of success to Arsenal over the last 12, 18 months, I feel like it would be a bit of a shame if he didn't start the season off. And then it's just only in his own hands, isn't it, as to how he performs because he's got some decent games to perform in.
Yeah, definitely. Another Arsenal player is Saka, and I've seen a few people potentially suggest captaining him in game week 1 as well. 5.6 points he's predicted. That's nearly 2 point. It is actually 2.3 under what Haaland is predicted. Do you think Saka maybe could be a differential captain for game week 1?
Is that Arsenal's the early kickoff though, isn't it?
It is early kickoff, so you're going against Gandhi as well, which
Yeah, I
is
feel like as much as we laugh and joke about gut feelings, that gut feeling never seems to be wrong. Um, I mean, at home to Forest, it's a shout. It's one of those though. It's a risk. It's a differential because you know, 9 times out of 10, Haaland's getting captained by the players that really want to do well in this league,
yeah.
in altogether. If you want to start the season off well, you're going to be a bit reluctant to not captain Haaland, I think, because you don't want him to accidentally run away with it. I know it's a Friday night game and it's the first night of the season, but it's a risk going for anyone else. Hey, don't get me wrong. I'm all for players being captained as opposed to Haaland, but I feel like I even can't see past Haaland this week.
Yeah, definitely. I think he's just the safe bet as well, isn't he, to go with for game week 1. I think for the early part of the season, just go safe. Go with the players who you think are going to get the most points. Kind of go with the crowd, I'd say, especially if you're playing for like rank and stuff. Go with the crowd. And then in the final few weeks where you do see rotation and other captaincy options do come available, I think that's then where you gamble on your captains. You go for the weirdos, the Brunos, the
Mm.
Sakas, the
Well, I've got
Jeffrey
a question
Schlupps.
actually for you.
Go on.
Just looking at this table, like we didn't mention Odegaard. I don't know if you feel like he's going to potentially be playing a bit deeper this season, or do you think he'll still have his freedom?
I did think that, when watching the Community Shield game, I don't know, I didn't feel like he was too involved in the kind of like attacking side of things. He
Mm.
overperformed on his XG as well last season. So I just get that feeling like I don't think he's going to be as good an asset this year. He could absolutely prove me wrong, but I just
No,
think for this,
I agree,
I just think for
especially
the
in
same price.
Havertz field.
Yeah, yeah. I think you can get Saka for the same price, so why would you not get him? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think as soon as you see Odegaard in the right positions, then you can maybe reevaluate that. But for the time being, I do feel like he might start off a little bit deeper than I saw him play the end of last season. Well, the majority of last season.
Yeah, definitely. Right, those were the predicted points. If you want to go and look at them, go to the link in the description and go and check out Draft Hound. Click that link. There's loads of cool free stuff and there's some paid stuff as well. And if you sign up using the link, it helps me out. So thank you very much for that. Right, that's enough kind of plug-in and bum licking. Let's move on to some fixture analysis. Now, these are in terms of the percentage chance of winning in game week 1. They are ordered are at the moment. The top is Arsenal, 80% chance of winning at home to Nottingham Forest. I don't think there's any surprises there.
I am surprised Arsenal are at the top, to be honest. I think the fact that they're at the top would maybe support Saka being captained.
Mm.
Because if Arsenal are going to win, you would back Saka to be involved.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, I'm surprised. I assumed City would be number one, I
I just
must say.
think it's because they're away, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, fair enough. But I mean, if you're going to go, that's when statistics can like kind of like maybe contradict one another because on the one hand, you think Haaland's going to be the banker of a captain's choice, but then on the other hand, if Arsenal are so highly ranked, so highly backed to win this weekend, more so than City, well, I can't actually read it, but what percentage is City?
To win this weekend, it's
Mm.
77%. So it's
Well, that's big 3%
yeah,
could
that
would
big.
make all the difference and could flick a few people over the edge to go for Saka. And you know what? There's the stats to prove it. It's not even my gut feeling recommending it.
Yeah, this data is like what bookies use and stuff like that to kind of come up with their odds as well. And if they're fancying Arsenal more than Manchester City, then who knows? Like you said, maybe Saka could be a differential shout for a captaincy, especially with if you pair that as well with the data. Haaland not scoring in six, if you're kind of playing into that narrative as well. Looking through some other ones as well. Brighton 77% at home to Luton. The bookies really not fancying Luton to do well in game week 1. A few other kind of surprising ones. Everton at 48% chance of winning at home against Fulham. What do you think about that one?
Well, it's in green still, so there's that. When does it become a worry?
I guess anything. It looks like anything below 35. Is that? It still looks like the bottom set of green
I
to
feel
me.
like if it's a 40, I feel like a 48% recommend like is backing a draw there. Then would you say?
No, I'd feel the slight win, isn't it?
I don't know. I don't know how these statistics are being used. Is it like
It's
48% win, 42%, no, 52% loss, or is
no,
there
because they'll factor
a
the draw in there, won't they, as well?
right? Okay. Well, in that case, I don't know how that's going to go at the start of the season, to be honest, because Everton have just not reinvested at all, have they?
No, no, they're an
We were talking
absolute
about this last
shambles.
week, like they could be, they could be third time unlucky. Um, yeah, I don't know how that season will go. I think Fulham have reinvested just about enough, but then of course we'll be quite heavily reliant on Vinicius up top because
Mm.
I, who knows how that Mitrovic saga is going to unfold and finish off because he seems pretty keen to never play for Fulham again. And they've got Jimenez, but I just don't feel like he's that guy, is he? Not anymore.
He's not that. He's not the same guy since his old head injury, is he? Old
Yeah.
Jimenez. Another interesting one as well. Liverpool well clear of Chelsea there, to be honest. So Liverpool 42, Chelsea 35. Some quick maths have got to be done here to figure out what a draw is.
Um,
I'm just gonna get a
23.
23.
I would say so.
Let me just get the old calculator up. As you can tell,
Um,
we didn't do degrees in maths. Um, what did you get in your GCSEs for maths?
I think I got an A to be honest,
Oh
so
bloody hell! You should be doing
should,
this then, lad.
should get this right to be honest.
What was I doing? 42. This is probably riveting content. This watching me calculate stuff. 77. So yeah,
It is
23.
23.
23. Wow, maths, ladies and gentlemen. Bet you didn't expect that.
Mm.
Whew. Hot stuff.
I would back Liverpool slightly more than Chelsea, but it just that's this kind of game where 1 minute, I don't know if you were watching all the Ashes percentages, is just like one wicket would happen, and all of a sudden the percentage chance of England beating Australia or Australia beating England would just change so drastically.
Yeah.
And I think that's the same with the Chelsea Liverpool game. I don't think it'd be quite the same in another game, maybe if Burnley went 1-0 up on City, that percentage chance of City winning is still going to be quite high. But the Liverpool Chelsea one, if Chelsea score first, that percentage will shoot up in Chelsea's favour. And likewise for Liverpool, I think.
Yeah. 100%. Right. That was a cool little bit of data. We're all going to move on to Q&A section of today's stream, and then we will wrap up as Jake's got, some important stuff to do at 8 o'clock, haven't you?
It's the end of my doggy daycare.
End of his doggy daycare. So if you do have any questions, now is the time to get them in. Get them absolutely flying in. We're trying to answer as many as we possibly can before we wrap up around 8 o'clock, and Jake, bogs off to go and do some doggy daycare. How are you feeling ahead of the start of the season, mate? Who's your like? You're building your ACCA for the weekend. Who's the first team going straight in there?
Ooh, good question. I think it's gonna have. It's got to be a Saturday 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
And the next question is who's playing Saturday at 3 o'clock? I know City, and so City will have already played. Arsenal early kickoff, so as much as they might be an 80% chance, I'm not ruining that 3 o'clock kickoff with Gandhi's curse. Um, I don't fancy Everton enough to see them beating Fulham. I feel like that one could be a draw. I don't really like doing the Premier League teams. I don't know about you, but whenever I do an accumulator, I usually go Championship and below, just because I can never really call the games. I'll do the Super Six though, but I think Palace. I think Palace are the number one. They are 3 o'clock Saturday.
They are a 3 o'clock Saturday.
There we go. I think Palace should be comfortably beating Sheffield United.
You'd hope so, especially after them selling like the two best players as well, Sanderbergen and Dye, and not really replacing them either.
Literally.
Do you think they could potentially be on for like the lowest points total in terms of Premier League points? It's a poor squad. It's a bad squad.
It's a shocking squad, but 11 points is atrocious. 11 points is something. I'll be quite proud of Sheffield United if they can undergo that. I think they should surpass that. Whether they get 20 points, I think is the real goal for them.
It would be kind of funny though to see them get 11 points.
Oh yeah, without shadow of a doubt. But I just feel like they could get themselves a couple of wins and draws at home. But we'll soon find out.
FPL Josh has sent his team in, and we're gonna have a read through it. Here we go. Onana, Gabriel, Estupinian, Anderson, Martinelli, Saka, Matoma, Rashford, Haaland, Alvarez, João Pedro, and then on the bench, Turner, Diaby, Chilwell, and Bell. And he's also got 2.5 million in the bank and has asked us for any recommendations. That, to be honest, is a ridiculously strong team, to be honest. My only consideration I would have is maybe dropping Matoma. I just think you don't want to have two Brighton attackers, to be honest. I think, well, you've actually got 3 Brighton players as well. So after game week 3, you're going to be looking to get rid of pretty much all of them. Maybe you hold Estupinian, maybe you hold João Pedro because he's cheap enough and he can just sit on your bench. Doesn't really matter. But for me, you've got to kind of look at a strategy where you've got to get rid of 3 players in game week 4, even if you take 2 transfers into that game week as well. It's not an ideal position to be in. So I think it's fine to go for the double up, João Pedro and Estupinian, because there's lots of other options and lots of other things you can do in that area. But for me, I would get rid of Matoma, especially if you've got 2.5 million in the bank. Obviously, we spoke about Diaz. I think James Maddison's a great shout as well to go for in that position because, their fixtures are good after game week 2. Do I think Alvarez starts?
No, I don't.
I don't know. It wasn't like a great performance, and I don't necessarily think he looks as good in terms of that in that 10 role that he's been playing. I just for me, he's not an option. I don't really like playing Pep Roulette. It's something that I always try and avoid. And I think if you've got
playing Diaby over Alvarez.
Yeah, I'd play Diaby over Alvarez, to be honest. I wouldn't even have Alvarez in there. I think you could get Watkins. I think that's a much better player and a much better shout to have, to be honest. You're thinking Pedro to Watkins. I think go the other way, go Alvarez to Watkins, to be honest. I think that's the smarter move. And then Eze over Matoma. Yeah.
Or Schlupp.
Or Schlupp. If you like Jeffrey Schlupp as well, that could be a shout. Yeah. He's a 1 week punt. Who's a 1 week punt? Eze or Matoma? It's gonna take
sure.
Yeah. Answer that question for us, Josh. Who's the 1 week punt? He's gone for game week 2. Then I can bench Martinelli. Why would you bench Martinelli? Interesting. Interesting. If we do have any other questions, do get them in now, and we will answer them and chat through them as well. Oh, you're gonna
I think
Alvarez is the 1 week punt.
off the top of my head, I think it's also a risk with the Pep Roulette, and also that's two strikers down on the Friday night.
On the Friday night. Who?
Alvarez and Haaland.
Oh yeah, true, true. I personally, I wouldn't go for. I don't like going for 1 week punts either. At the start of the game, your transfers are going to be so precious. I think it's better to kind of go for. Oh, nearly not my laptop.
Bowen is a 1 week punt.
Bowen is a massive 1 week punt, but I just think you don't want to be wasting transfers. You want a team that's pretty much set and forget, to be honest. And like, you've got your players on the bench who can come in and cover and stuff, but you want a team that's going to be pretty solid for those first few game weeks, so you can kind of feel out who the form players are, who's going to do extremely well, and then you can use your transfers to kind of move on them, rather than booking in transfers straight away from the start. That would be my suggestion. Yeah, I don't like the Palace fixture against Arsenal either. I think for my team, I'm going to bench and go Henry in for Eze. That's the kind of plan there, Josh, for that one. But yeah.
I think he's saying this because he doesn't like Martinelli playing Palace.
Yeah, I guess, but still. Any other questions? How did Tranmere get on last night, by the way, mate?
They won, mate. Hey, tonight we could get a Mansfield Tranmere.
Oh, no, but we don't want that. It'll be another Tuesday night. All our games this season are Tuesday night.
It's fine. If Mansfield get Tranmere at Mansfield, I'll come down with you.
Okay.
Or imagine we get do any the Premier League clubs enter?
Yeah. It's all the non-European ones.
All right, okay.
But
Well, what if we get like an Everton Mansfield?
Oh, I'd be so game for that. That'd be. I want Leeds Mansfield. I think that would be great.
At Ellen Road, yeah.
Yeah, Ellen Road. That'd be decent. That, to be honest, finished 6K last year. That's impressive. That, Josh, to be honest. You want Højlund as well when he's fit. What do you think about Højlund joining United? That's an interesting one.
It is, yeah. I can't say I know enough about him, to be honest. Clearly, United know a lot about him to have paid that much for him, so I'll keep my mouth shut just before he proves me wrong or right, because who knows? You don't spend that much money on a player that is garbage, so he clearly knows where the back of the net is, regardless of his stats being a little bit overshadowed by the other Scandinavian fella. But I guess it's harsh to maybe compare the two. So yeah, just give it a few months and see how things go. I don't know how long he's injured for.
I think it's like a month or two.
Bloody hell, as if you've spent that much money on a player that's going to miss the first couple of weeks of the season.
Yeah, and you said that United have spent big money, but how many times have they spent big money and it's not worked out?
True, that is true. Hence why I'm keeping my mouth shut, because I don't want to say anything that I'll come back to regret. But at the same time, to be honest, for me, he just seemed to have a purple patch for Denmark, and that was it. But that's all the information I've ever seen or heard about him, whereas I haven't actually gone and researched him. So maybe some average United fans will have actually gone and done the research and really liked how he's played. And if that's the case, then fair enough. I can't lie, didn't know too much about Szoboszlai when he signed.
Yeah.
Who knows how he's going to perform, but if you go and do the research and stuff, you can very easily convince yourself that they're the best player you could have imagined signing. And they've both signed for pretty similar amounts of money. So I know they do different roles, but both of them, for me, I can't say, oh yeah, Højlund's going to be garbage. What a waste of money. But Szoboszlai is going to be the best player I've ever seen, because I don't know much about either of them.
Yeah, definitely. Sticking with the Liverpool theme, someone has asked, why is nobody mentioning Jota and Diaz? We already spoke about Diaz, but Jota's
Spoke about
pre-season.
both together, to be fair.
Yeah.
They both linked up really well the other day.
Jota's pre-season kind of numbers have been very impressive, to be honest.
As of Diaz, to be fair, I think Jota's got a couple more than Diaz, but Diaz has still popped up with a few goals. Yeah, I think we did spend a good 5-10 minutes speaking about these two and the dilemma as to whether Jota starts. I think it's a pretty big certainty that it's going to be Diaz and Salah covering the wings. Diaz, he did really play well with Jota, so like I would like to see him start, but at the same time, I really don't want to not see Gakpo start because I feel like he plays really well. So unless we play the same starting 11 that played against Darmstadt on um,
Monday.
was it Monday?
Yeah.
Um, if they go for the same formation there, where Gakpo played as just an attacking midfielder, then that would be nice. But for the time being, I feel like I'd hold my horses on Jota, and maybe if you want someone that's an attacker for Liverpool but don't have the funds for Salah, I'd go for Diaz.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think as well, a lot of people are quite hot on Nunes at the moment. For me, I would avoid him, and I think that's probably the same. I think the kind of the front three or the front four, if you include Gakpo in that, are all above him. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if you feel the exact same about that.
For the time being, anyway. Bless him. I want him to succeed more than any of those attackers. But and I think that's the same for any Liverpool fan. They really do want to see him perform well, but he's just going to have to be patient. I know there'll be a lot of pressure on him if he doesn't do well this season, but he's got plenty of opportunities that will come his way. The Europa League may be a blessing in disguise for him, to be fair, because it will give him a slightly lesser quality and maybe a bit of an opportunity to show what he's really worth.
Yeah, the old Europa League this season. It's gonna be.
It's great, mate. I've got my pub quiz night in a sports bar on a Thursday night with Liverpool in the background. It couldn't have been timed any better, so I'm absolutely over the moon with it.
Yeah, I can imagine. Oh,
How's your Europa League season going?
mate, we've never even been close to Europe. We get the luckiest we'd probably get on a Thursday night is what's it called, the Papa John's. If there's a rearranged match on a Thursday night, that's the best we're getting.
It's all right. We'll see you when you play Liverpool in the 21s or whatever.
Hey lad, we're gonna get Liverpool third round. You heard it here first. Third round at Carabao. We'll beat Leeds, and then we'll move on to you, and we'll take you at Anfield. Lucas Akins hat trick.
Sound. I look forward to it.
Right. Any last questions? This is kind of like, what's it called when you're at a pub and they ring the bell?
Last orders.
That's the one. Last orders. But in terms of, we're not serving alcoholic drinks or crisps. We're just serving questions about a game.
Questionable
Questionable
service.
questions, to be honest, that don't really mean much to anyone, and you'll probably forget in about 5 minutes. So yeah. Oh dear. It's been a good stream.
Saxton lad's gone a bit quiet, hasn't he?
Yeah. I want Lewis Saxton back. Where was he? He was putting in some good questions. What are we thinking about Sterling and Mudryk? Are they on our radars?
Not yet. I think he's the players that you just need to leave for the time being. I think Sterling at least has dropped significantly in price because he was overpriced last season. Mudryk, yeah, he hasn't really done anything convincing. He can run really fast. I'll give him that.
Whoa! It's good for FPL that extra point that you get
Do you
for
get the
running
bonus
fast.
point for really
Yeah,
fast running?
really fast running.
In which case, get Carl Walker in. He'll also
Oh
be a
yeah,
nice.
oh yeah.
But yeah, if Mudryk can start finishing his chances, then yeah, you never know because he does seem to have the. He does seem like a promising player, but I don't think I've seen anything that's convinced me to go for either of them at the moment.
Yeah, I think both of them have played quite a few minutes in pre-season. Haven't really kind of impressed, but at least they're playing games. And with is it Muduweki? Is that the guy's name?
Yeah.
Muduweki, who they signed from PSV, is currently out injured as well. So I definitely think you're going to see a lot more of Sterling, of Mudryk as well. And I agree with your point. I think they're just wait and sees. Chelsea do have good fixtures after game week 1 as well. So if they are starting to slap, you can easily move on them.
Well, I think whoever performs well in the game on Sunday would be a good player to keep an eye on, or maybe even potentially bring in.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
you said,
definitely.
fixtures look good, and if a Mudryk or a Sterling perform well against Liverpool, then you'd like to think that they're going to kick on because that's a really good fixture for a player like that to get some confidence if they're going to get some kind of goal contribution.
Yeah, definitely. Right, last question we're going to go for. Son from Spurs. Do you fancy him?
Just a little bit much money, I'd say, and I think he's another one where maybe just wait a little bit as well, because he's really going to eat up the funds, isn't he, at the moment?
I feel he's one of them. If you've got Rashford and Rashford doesn't start the season well, you potentially could just switch to him as they are the same price point. I think that is a potential option. Obviously, in this Spurs team, it's going to be very attacking. But I think Kulu at 7 could also be a great option if that's the case as well. Save that extra 2 million. Just a little shout. We've had another good question from Josh. So you know what? We'll make this one the last one. It's just like when you're on the phone to your missus and you're just like, oh, no, you hang up first. No, give me another question about FPL, please. If both of you was to pick the most overhyped player of this season, who would it be? And who would be your favourite differentials? Just read that bit at the end. So one for overhyped, one for your favourite differential. If Jeffrey Schlupp's not yours, you're done.
Overhyped? Do you have an overhyped off the top of your head?
I think Matoma is probably in there.
Yeah, I like that.
I think Odegaard maybe as well, if he's playing in a little bit of a deeper role.
See how the start of the season goes, but maybe Trent could be in that band as well.
Yeah. I like that.
I like to think he's not overhyped because I've got an in. But yeah, I can understand why he potentially could be seen as overhyped, especially the way that we're performing defensively at the moment. I think Matoma, I think I'm going to have to agree with you on Matoma, to be honest.
I just think his ownership is like ridiculously high. They've got so much quality as well in terms of the attacking areas. And after those 3 good fixtures, you're probably going to want to like look to sell him.
Yeah.
And you've got to be quick about it because his ownership's going to be that high. He's just going to plummet in value. So you've got to get off him quick if you do go for him, to be honest. But your differential, who's your favourite differential? And if it ain't Schlupp...
I'm not allowed to say Schlupp. My favourite differential, I'm going to go for Gibbs White.
Ooh,
I think
right.
if Forest are going to do well this season, I think he's going to be at the forefront of it. I've not got him in my starting 11 just because I do think Arsenal will win. He could score, and so I could be regretting not having him to play because I do think he's the type of player that in a defeat to a big club that Forest should lose out to, I think he's the type of player that would still contribute in some way. But when it really matters, I think against the teams that they should be beating, I think Gibbs White will be the main man for Forest. And I think I'm one of very few people that has gone for him at this stage. So that's mine.
Yeah, I like Gibbs White. Obviously, really involved. I think he fits that talisman theory that we've spoke about quite a bit already. And I think when the fixtures do turn good for Forest, I think he's definitely going to be a player that I look for. In terms of my differential, I think Eze is probably going to be the one for me, or this is just absolutely rogue. Phil Billing.
Depends, yeah.
Just Bournemouth have got that new manager. He was the first manager in I think it was 40 plus years to beat Atletico, Barca, and Real all in one season.
Wow.
So if he can bring that kind of football to the Premier League and do extremely well there, I think Phil Billing's just got something about him as well.
Yeah, okay, I can see that. I just wanted to say for Josh, just after he's ousted me, that I've changed my most overhyped player, and I actually think it's Højlund.
It's Marcus Rashford, mate.
Yeah, any United player.
Yeah. Purple
except for Onana and Shaw, all about them.
Yeah. Right, that was our kind of preview team selection stream. If you did enjoy it and, you want to come back for more, there's a stream on Friday. Unfortunately, Jake's not with me, so you'd have to put up with me and whatever dribble comes out of my mouth. So yeah, if you're around on Friday, you want a deadline stream, you've got any questions about your team, that'll be the place. Come over there, come get involved. We're going to just be talking about everything from league predictions, player predictions, going through my team, looking through all kinds of sorts of data. It's going to be a great stream. It's going to be about 2.5 hours long, so genuinely I don't know what I'm going to fill in that time. Just there's going to be a lot of dribble coming out of my mouth, so it's definitely worth it.
Might have to tune in.
Yeah, I would, to be honest, lad, because
I'm all about the dribble.
It's all about the dribble. It's probably going to be like, imagine if you put a camera on Michael Schumacher right now. That's probably going to be the same vibes, I imagine.
Oh wow!
I think that's a good place to leave it, to be honest.
Oh
uh,
God, you can tell you've not got any sponsors just yet.
yeah, we're small, we're small. Oh,
Oh God, imagine you were sponsored by Ferrari, lad.
oh, jeez.
Uh,
Anyway, thank you very much for watching, guys. We will be back next Tuesday or Wednesday for one of these streams. And if you want to come say hi on the deadline stream, that will be on Friday about 4, half 4. I'll put a tweet out for that. But thank you very much for watching.